Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Rausan Pereira, on Rajya Sabha television. Over the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events to have happened around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. Donald Trump blames China for North Korea talks breaking down. US President feels Pyongyang is under tremendous pressure from Beijing because of US-China trade war. The Argentinian peso tumbles to a new low despite interest rate rise. Drastic action by central bank fails to arrest plunge in the currency. President Macri seeks emergency release of $50 billion in IMF funds amid financial crisis. BIMSTEC summit concludes with the adoption of Kathmandu Declaration. MOU on grid integration paving way for buying and selling electricity among member states signed. Prime Minister Modi underscores need to improve road links, trade and digital connectivity among member countries. And UN report says top military figures in Myanmar must be investigated for genocide in Rakhine State. Panel documents shocking crimes by military. Myanmar rejects findings in the damning report. Our top focus on the program this week. The US and Canada missed a Friday deadline imposed by the Trump administration to revamp the North American Free Trade Agreement, but agreed to extend talks. US said that the talks with Canada were constructive and made progress. US officials are continuing to work towards the agreement. US trade officials are expected to meet with their Canadian counterparts next Wednesday.
A great deal for both countries with Mexico. Big thing, big thing. NAFTA was a disaster, and we've changed it around. We're not going to have companies leaving anymore. We're not going to have people losing their jobs because these great companies are leaving for other lands, and in certain cases, Mexico's got some tremendous advantages also. It's good for both.
I'm not going to negotiate in public, but I can say that over the past number of days, we've had some very positive conversations on a broad range of issues, and we have been very clear about where our red lines are. We've been very clear about where we think there's room for give and take. This is something that we take seriously as a renegotiation. We understand how this works. We've remained good faith about it. We've remained constructive and reasonable, and we will continue to do that.
Well, joining me for a chat right now is strategic analyst KP Nayar. Mr. Nayar, welcome, and thank you for joining me on the program. NAFTA talks, of course, dominating the American press over the last 1 week especially. It's only half a deal as of now.
Yes, 1/3 actually.
Oh, yeah, 1/3 actually. Yes, that's true.
Well, for Trump, it is a victory of sorts, in the sense that at the end of 2 years of talking, almost 2 years of talking, he has something concrete to show in the field of trade. Otherwise, he rails at China, he rails at Canada, he rails at Mexico. In the end, I mean, we need to go forward, right? At least now, you have a deal with Mexico for whatever it is worth. But it is also probably Trump's biggest trade policy challenge, because even assuming that Canada keeps out and he goes ahead and signs, he notifies Congress and he signs after 90 days, Trump, this agreement.
But he's not the final authority, the Congress is.
Yes, that's what I'm coming to. Yeah, if he signs it, he has to get it passed by the Congress. And the problem is that if it's a three-way deal, he gets fast-track authority, and he can get the deal done in the Congress with 51 votes. But if it's just US-Mexico agreement, then he needs 60 votes. You know, Senate rules are very archaic and complicated. So it's you have an agreement, but at the same time, it's not a done deal. That's why I said it is really the big challenge for Trump to have the agreement underway.
You know, talking about Mexico now, there has been a lot of criticism. Several analysts have also criticized Mexico because they have not taken Canada on board. Do you believe that that criticism is justified?
You see, the outgoing Mexican president wanted something to show before he demitted office in November. So he also had selfish reasons more than national interest or Mexico's economic interest, because he wanted to go in a blaze of glory. See, for Mexico, a lot of things depend on relations with the US. Although it's an independent country, in many ways economically, in terms of people living in the US and all that, Mexico is an extension of the US. So now the outgoing president can go out claiming that he finally did this deal with the United States. Also, the incoming president, the next president, is left-leaning. He may not have been so conciliatory towards the United States, you see. So Mexico did more what was in the president's interest, and to some extent in the interest of long-term trade, because the next president, the incoming president, may not have been able to conclude a deal.
Right.
So it is less that they left out Mexico than they tried to take into account. Sorry, they left out Canada. It's more that they took into account all these domestic factors.
Talking about Canada now, what do you see happening as far as the Canada issue is concerned? Because both parties have said that, the talks are going to continue into next week as well. Do you see a resolution in sight?
Well, the agreement between US and Mexico, on the one hand, helps Canada. On the other hand, it's a disadvantage, because if there is no three-way agreement, which strengthens Canada's bargaining power, if there is no three-way agreement, the deal is virtually undone, except that it is on paper. That way, there will be pressure on the Trump administration also to make concessions. But it's a disadvantage in the sense that, Mexico has made the kind of concessions to reach an agreement with the Trump administration that Canada did not want to agree to. Like, for example, workers' rights. Canada has a very liberal government.
Yes.
So now, since Canada is also under pressure to work out an agreement, they may have to give up some of their demands and come to terms with what Mexico has agreed with the United States.
Right.
So it works both ways, you see. Everybody now has a stake. Earlier, when there was no two-way agreement, nobody had a stake in it. Everybody could talk. But now you have something concrete on the table, and everybody has to come together to produce it, because after all, it is NAFTA, it's $1.2 trillion a year trade. So everybody has a lot of stake in it.
So everybody has a lot of stake, so everybody really needs to put things together.
Yes, that's right, yes.
All right, Mr. Nayar, thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, moving on now. President Donald Trump blamed China for derailing a US-North Korea rapprochement, implying that it's placing tremendous pressure on Pyongyang as a result of ongoing trade disputes between Washington and Beijing. Trump also placed the blame for the challenges squarely on China, but also went on to praise his personal ties with the leaders of both North Korea and China. Here's a report.
US President Donald Trump, just days after calling off a planned trip to North Korea by his top diplomat, said on Wednesday he thought the United States was doing well in its diplomatic efforts with Pyongyang.
We're doing well with North Korea, we'll have to see.
Trump also lashed out at China for undermining its work with North Korea as criticism over progress on denuclearization mounts. In a series of tweets, he also said he saw no reason to resume the joint war games with South Korea that have angered North Korea. Earlier, his defense secretary said military exercises might continue.
I think part of the North Korean problem is caused by our trade disputes with China. China's been taking out about $500 billion a year from the United States for many years, and we can't let that happen. So when we started working a little bit against China, and we have a great relationship with China. I have a great relationship with President Xi. I think he's a terrific man, a terrific person. But we have to straighten out our trade relationship because too much money is being lost by us.
Trump placed the blame for the challenges squarely on China, but also went on to praise his personal ties with the leaders of both North Korea and China. The confusing blend of criticism, praise and veiled threat comes as Washington faces mounting pressure to deliver results following the unprecedented talks between the US and North Korea.
I have a fantastic relationship with Chairman Kim, as you probably know, and we're just going to have to see how it all ends up. But I had to move on China from the standpoint of trade because it really was not fair to our country. We were just pouring money. For many years, presidents, they closed their eyes.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry responded on Thursday, calling Trump's comments an irresponsible distortion of facts and logic.
The US side's irresponsible distortion of facts and logic is world-leading and really not something the ordinary person can understand. We hope the US can keep its words like China and play a positive, constructive and responsible role in pushing for a political resolution of the peninsula issue.
Since the June summit, North Korea has halted its missile tests, claimed to have dismantled a nuclear testing site and returned remains that are believed to be of US soldiers killed in the 1950-53 Korean War. But Trump has called out Pyongyang for what he said was insufficient progress on their broad agreement on denuclearization. Recent media reports suggest that Pyongyang is reluctant to proceed because Trump failed to live up to his alleged promise to Kim that he would sign an official declaration to end the Korean War. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, moving on now, the 4th BIMSTEC summit was held in Nepal on the 30th and the 31st of August. At the conclusion of the two-day summit on Friday, member nations unanimously adopted the Kathmandu Declaration, calling for a peaceful, prosperous and sustainable Bay of Bengal region. They deplored terrorism as a great threat to international peace and security and pledged to jointly combat terrorism in all its forms.
A peaceful, prosperous and sustainable Bay of Bengal region. The pledge made in the Kathmandu Declaration, adopted unanimously by leaders of BIMSTEC nations at the concluding ceremony of the 4th summit of the formation. Member nations also signed a Memorandum of Understanding to establish the BIMSTEC grid interconnection to enhance energy cooperation among member states.
I am pleased to express sincere thanks to all the delegates for signing the Memorandum of Understanding on the establishment of BIMSTEC grid interconnection. I am confident that the MOU will promote cooperation in energy sector between member states.
Nepalese Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli also handed over the chairmanship of the forum to Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena. Sri Lanka will now host the 5th summit of BIMSTEC.
I wish to thank all member states for the trust and confidence placed in Sri Lanka. I wish to congratulate Nepal for hosting a very successful 4th BIMSTEC summit and for the warm hospitality afforded to all of us. Sri Lanka looks forward to implementing the ambitious agenda this summit has set for us. I look forward to welcoming all of you to Sri Lanka.
The 18-point Kathmandu Declaration is expected to enhance the effectiveness of the BIMSTEC Secretariat by engaging it in various technical and economic activities in the region. The declaration lays stress on cooperation based on respect for the principles of sovereign equality, territorial integrity, political independence, non-interference in internal affairs, peaceful coexistence, and mutual benefit. Work collectively towards making BIMSTEC a stronger, more effective and result-oriented organization for achieving a peaceful, prosperous and sustainable Bay of Bengal region. It also resolves to achieve an enhanced level of economic and social development in the region. It also reposes faith unequivocally in the principles and purposes of the Charter of the United Nations and strives to strengthen it. BIMSTEC leaders strongly condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. The declaration says the nations deplore terrorist attacks in all parts of the world, including in BIMSTEC countries. They also strongly condemn terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. It also states there can be no justification whatsoever for any act of terrorism. BIMSTEC nations affirmed their support to identify and hold accountable states and non-state entities that encourage, support or finance terrorism, provide sanctuaries to terrorists and terror groups, and falsely extol their virtues. It also calls upon all countries to devise a comprehensive approach to stop terror financing.
Terrorism is a common enemy of the humanity, so all member states has unwavering commitment against it. So we will discuss, we will share the experiences, we will coordinate our policies and programs to defeat the terrorist threats.
Ahead of the concluding ceremony, leaders of the seven-nation group also met for a retreat. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And another news, now Argentina's government has unexpectedly asked for the early release of a $50 billion loan from the IMF amid a growing economic crisis. President Mauricio Macri said that the move was designed to restore confidence in the Argentine economy. The Argentine peso has lost more than 40% of its value against the US dollar this year, and inflation is rampant. The IMF confirmed on Wednesday it was looking to strengthen the arrangement and changing its phasing. Argentina's peso collapsed almost 6% to a record low of 33.5 per US dollar on Wednesday, prompting the central bank to sell dollar reserves for the second straight day, while the president asked the International Monetary Fund for early release of funds under a standby deal.
Quiero anunciarles que hemos acordado con el Fondo Monetario Internacional.
I want to announce that we have agreed with the International Monetary Fund to advance all the necessary funds to guarantee compliance with the financial program next year. This decision aims to eliminate any uncertainty that might have risen around the worsening of the international context.
Ante el empeoramiento del contexto internacional.
The currency is down more than 43.5% in 2018, prompting massive central bank interventions, including the sale of $500 million in reserves between Tuesday and Wednesday. Nerves are frayed in Latin America's number 3 economy as it struggles to break free from its notorious cycle of once-a-decade financial crises. The most recent one, punctuated by a 2002 debt default, tossed millions of middle-class Argentines into poverty. Investors are once again concerned that Argentina, with its high inflation, weak economy, and fallout from a global sell-off in emerging markets, may not meet its debt obligations. Despite assurances by President Mauricio Macri, who gave a televised address to soothe nerves, market analyst Marcelo Trovato said investors just don't believe Macri and his economic team.
The market is not believing the government today, and above all, it's not believing the economic team. I think that if the finance minister and central bank president Caputo don't step aside, This will get much worse because it's not a matter that is happening because of economic measures that were taken, but rather that at this moment the actors have lost credibility.
Macri sealed a $50 billion IMF standby financing deal in June that reduced the need for costly bond market funding and briefly steadied the peso. His government has since announced more than $2 billion in budget savings, a process he promised to continue. The central bank sold $200 million of its reserves in 2 currency auctions on Tuesday aimed at stabilizing the peso. Another $300 million were auctioned on Wednesday. Trovato said that he believes the lack of confidence in the current government, along with the lack of confidence caused by the previous administration and corruption scandals, has led investors to flee the South American nation.
Hay un proceso anárquico en gestación, porque digamos...
There is a process of anarchy in growth. The lack of political credibility that is currently in charge of the administration, plus the disrepute left by the administration in 2015 is creating anarchy, which is a very dangerous process in Argentina that investors see, perceive, and that is why the capital is fleeing.
Macri was elected in 2015 on a free market platform after 8 years of deep government intervention in the economy under previous President Cristina Fernandez. Ahead of an expected re-election bid next year, Macri has seen his popularity fall after reducing retirement benefits and cutting utility subsidies that people had grown accustomed to under Fernandez. Lowering subsidies was aimed at reducing Argentina's fiscal deficit, but the move also boosted consumer prices by raising household water and heating bills. 12-month inflation was clocked at 31.2% in July. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. A UN report on Monday said that top military figures in Myanmar must be investigated for genocide in Rakhine State and crimes against humanity in other areas. The report, based on hundreds of interviews, is the strongest condemnation from the UN so far of violence against Rohingya Muslims. It says the army's tactics are grossly disproportionate to the actual security threats. Here's more.
Myanmar's military carried out mass killings and gang rapes of Muslim Rohingya with genocidal intent, and the commander-in-chief and 5 generals should be prosecuted for orchestrating the gravest crimes under law. UN investigators said on Monday.
The way in which sexual violence has been taking place in Myanmar is particularly brutal, and take it from a former special rapporteur on violence against women. The scale, brutality, and systematic nature of rape and violence indicate that they are part of a deliberate strategy to intimidate, terrorize, or punish the civilian population. They are used as a tactic of war. The acts we found include rape, gang rape, sexual slavery, forced nudity, and mutilations. Similar patterns of sexual violence have been reported in Myanmar for at least 3 decades. During the clearance operations of 2017 in Rakhine, victims of sexual violence were subsequently often killed.
The civilian government led by Aung San Suu Kyi has allowed hate speech to thrive, destroyed documents, and failed to protect minorities from crimes against humanity and war crimes by the army in Rakhine, Kachin, and Shan states, they said in a report.
We are deeply disappointed that State Councillor Daw Aung San Suu Kyi has not used her position or her moral authority to stem, prevent, or condemn the unfolding events in Rakhine State. In bringing out this report, we hope the international community will act not only to bring justice for victims, but also to help deter future atrocity.
At a news conference for the publication of the report, a member of the fact-finding mission on Myanmar, Christopher Sidoti, said the mission concluded that prosecution is warranted in relation to genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes.
The fact-finding mission has concluded on reasonable grounds that the patterns of gross human rights violations and serious violations of international humanitarian law that it has found amount to the gravest crimes under international law. These have principally been committed by the military, the Tatmadaw. The mission has concluded that criminal investigation and prosecution is warranted, focusing on the top Tatmadaw generals in relation to the three categories of crimes under international law: genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes.
The UN panel, led by former Indonesian Attorney General Marzuki Darusman, named the Myanmar Army's Commander-in-Chief, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, and 5 other generals who should face justice. They included Brigadier General Aung Aung, commander of the 33rd Light Infantry Division, which oversaw operations in the coastal village of Indin, where 10 Rohingya captive boys and men were killed.
The main perpetrator of the serious human rights violations outlined in our report, including of the acts of sexual violence, is the Myanmar military. The Tatmadaw Command exercises effective control over its troops as well as over their armed actors deployed in military operations. In our report, we have listed the names of the highest level of command. In doing so, we seek to underscore their responsibility. Responsibility starts at the top. We believe that these individuals must be investigated and prosecuted for the crimes committed in Myanmar. Their names are the Tatmadaw Commander-in-Chief, Min Aung Hlaing. It is clear that throughout the period in question, he is at the helm of the Tatmadaw with effective control over government forces involved in violations. The Deputy Commander-in-Chief, Vice Senior General So Win. Commander Bureau of Special Operations, 3, Lieutenant General Ong Kyaw Zhao. Commander Western Regional Military Command, Major General Mang Wang So. Commander 33rd Light Infantry Division, Brigadier General Ong Ong. Commander 99th Light Infantry Division, Brigadier General Tan U.
A year ago, government troops led a brutal crackdown in Myanmar's Rakhine state in response to attacks by the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army on 30 Myanmar police posts and a military base. Some 7 lakh Rohingya Muslims fled the crackdown, and most are now living in refugee camps in neighboring Bangladesh. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And finally, pop legend Michael Jackson would have turned 60 on August 29th. Members of the Jackson family, along with his children, celebrated his life at a special performance of the show Michael Jackson 1 in Las Vegas on his birth anniversary. I'm going to leave you with some visuals of the king of pop. Until next time, this is Rausan Pereira signing off.